Love true crime? Want more shocking stories like this? Hit subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of the latest twists and turns. Join us on True Crime Secrets for exclusive deep dives into the most mysterious and chilling cases. Don't miss a single moment. Subscribe now. Imagine for a moment. You're in a relationship. You trust someone with your heart, with your life. But what happens when that trust is shattered? When the person you love most becomes the one who will betray you in the worst way possible? This is the story of Maya Roberts, a young mother whose life seemed to be on track. She had a child, a family, and the man she loved. But beneath the surface, things were not what they seemed. The betrayal she thought she could handle would lead to something unimaginable. Her closest loved one, the father of her child, would gain her trust only to use it for a deadly purpose. How did things go so horribly wrong? Was this a crime driven by passion? Or was it something much more calculated, something far more chilling? The truth lies in the web of lies, secrets, and revenge that Maya never saw coming. Stick with me as we unravel the details of a life turned into a nightmare. This isn't just a story of heartbreak, it's a story of a trust broken, a life lost, and a vengeance so cold it can freeze your soul. Maya Roberts had everything a young woman could wish for. At 26, she was a vibrant mother to a beautiful child, and she had a close-knit circle of friends who admired her warmth and energy. On the surface, Maya's life seemed to be full of promise, but beneath that sunny exterior, a storm was quietly gathering. Her relationship with Marcus Steele, the father of her child, had always been complicated. They were no longer together, yet the ties between them were far from severed. Marcus, once the love of her life, now played a role she hadn't fully understood. A dangerous one. But it wasn't just Marcus that had Maya's heart and attention. There was another, someone on the fringes of her world. Jason Thompson. Jason, or Jay as everyone called him, was more than just a familiar face in the neighborhood. He was Marcus's rival, someone who had earned a reputation for being ruthless, someone who couldn't be trusted. But for reasons only Maya could understand, she found herself drawn to him. As Maya navigated her tangled relationships with both men, she didn't realize just how far the betrayal had gone. What seemed like simple choices, casual moments of infidelity, or acts of anger would soon lead to a chilling web of deceit. The tension between Marcus and Jay was no secret. The two men had been feuding for years, their rivalry spilling over into violence and threats. But it was more than just a neighborhood grudge. Behind the scenes, something far more dangerous was taking root. A sense of betrayal so deep, it would drive one man to take the ultimate step for revenge. What was supposed to be a complicated love triangle turned into something much darker, and it all centered around Maya's misplaced trust. On a quiet Friday night in June, as the summer heat clung to the streets, the calm of the neighborhood was shattered. It wasn't until late into the evening that anyone realized something was wrong. Maya Roberts, the vibrant young mother, hadn't responded to any calls or messages from her friends or family, which was highly unusual. Concern quickly turned into panic when someone finally went to check on her at her apartment. When the door was opened, the first thing they noticed was how eerily still the apartment was. No music, no sounds of the television, just silence. But that silence quickly gave way to something much more chilling. Maya's lifeless body sprawled across her bed. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken furniture, no signs of forced entry. Everything appeared undisturbed, except for one crucial detail: Maya's body. The cause of death? Suffocation. The killer had pressed down with calculated force, leaving no room for escape. It was a methodical, deliberate act. One that told the investigators this wasn't the result of a heated argument or a spur-of-the-moment rage. Whoever had done this had planned it. The lack of violence or disorder at the scene spoke volumes. This wasn't a crime of opportunity, it was carefully thought out. And the most unsettling part? The note left behind. On her bedside table, beneath a half-empty glass of water, lay a small, handwritten note. The words were cryptic, but they struck with the force of a confession. It was clear. Betrayal had played a part in this murder. The note wasn't just a sign of guilt, it was a message. a deliberate statement to the person who would find it. "You never saw it coming," the note read. The words lingered in the air like a taunt, a reminder that trust, once broken, could never be fixed. The question now was, who had left it? Within hours of Maya's body being discovered, detectives launched into action, sifting through every detail, no matter how small. Their first step was clear: uncover the truth behind Maya's relationships. It was evident from the start that her personal life was anything but simple. Detectives immediately turned their attention to Marcus Steele, Maya's ex-boyfriend and father of her young child. The two had shared a tumultuous history, marked by countless arguments and bitter exchanges. At first glance, it seemed like the classic case of a bitter ex-partner seeking revenge, but as detectives dug deeper, a troubling pattern began to emerge. Marcus had always suspected that Maya had been unfaithful. Despite their tumultuous relationship, he had tried to keep the peace for the sake of their child, but there was something he couldn't shake: an instinct that Maya's affections were no longer entirely his. When the police questioned him about his whereabouts the night of Maya's death, his answers were vague, evasive, and marked by visible signs of stress. But as the investigation progressed, it quickly became clear that Marcus wasn't the only person who could have had a motive. A breakthrough came when phone records linked Jason Thompson, Marcus's longtime rival, to Maya's apartment in the days leading up to the murder. Jason had been more than just a neighbor. Their history was a tangled mess of grudges, jealousy, and territorial disputes, none of which seemed to fit the clean-cut image he had maintained in the neighborhood. Jason had a reputation for being dangerous, someone who never backed down from a fight. So, the question remained: why would Marcus's rival have any reason to harm Maya, a woman who wasn't directly involved in their feud? Was this an act of revenge, or was something deeper at play? As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that a web of lies, jealousy, and unspoken secrets connected the three of them in ways no one could have anticipated. Maya had been in the center of it all, unknowingly fueling a fire that would ultimately consume her life. Was she a victim of her own trust? Or was her murder part of a plan that had been set in motion long before the night of her death? Marcus had long suspected that Maya was hiding something from him, but it wasn't until he uncovered the full truth that everything clicked into place. The man she'd been seeing, Jason Thompson, her secret lover, her betrayer, was the final piece of the puzzle. The confrontation he had always dreaded, the one that would unravel everything, had finally arrived. What Marcus didn't expect, though, was the twisted sense of satisfaction that came with uncovering her lies. It was one thing to suspect betrayal, it was another to see the undeniable truth etched in text messages, phone calls, and quiet rendezvous. But even as the betrayal burned within him, Marcus knew that simply confronting Maya wouldn't be enough. It wasn't about just ending their relationship anymore. The betrayal had to be repaid. But Marcus wasn't an impulsive man. He was patient, calculating, methodical. He wasn't going to act out of rage. Instead, he would use Maya's trust to his advantage. For weeks, he played the part of the devoted father, the understanding ex-partner, the man who could put their troubled past behind them for the sake of their child. The conversations were innocent, the gestures warm, all designed to lull Maya into a false sense of security. She thought she was being given another chance, but Marcus had a much darker plan in mind. As the days passed, Marcus slowly infiltrated Maya's life again. He spent time at her apartment, offering help with their son, pretending to work on their co-parenting arrangement. Every moment was calculated, every gesture designed to win back Maya's trust. But, beneath the surface, he was planning something far more chilling. The evening of Maya's death, Marcus carefully executed his plan. The final text messages between them, exchanged just hours before the murder, spoke of reconciliation. Maya, unaware of Marcus's true intentions, believed they were on the path to healing. But Marcus had already made his decision. He would get close enough to kill her. He had been planning this for weeks, studying true crime documentaries for ideas, learning how to leave as little evidence behind as possible. The chilling nature of his preparation became clear when investigators unearthed evidence showing Marcus had carefully mapped out the night of the murder, right down to the smallest details. He had watched documentaries on similar cases, absorbing methods and analyzing patterns. He wasn't just a man seeking revenge, he was a man preparing a calculated execution, all while playing the role of the caring father. Maya never saw it coming. The life she thought she had rebuilt was nothing but a facade, constructed by the very person who had once promised to love her. The revenge wasn't just about ending her life, it was about restoring his control over a woman who had slipped from his grasp. And when Maya's final moments arrived, it wasn't just a lover's quarrel. It was a well-thought-out, cold-blooded act of vengeance. The calm that followed the murder was deceptive. The community was left reeling from the shocking news, struggling to comprehend how someone they thought they knew so well could be capable of such brutality. But behind the scenes, law enforcement was working quickly to uncover the truth. It didn't take long for the pieces to fall into place. Detectives carefully examined the evidence, piecing together the timeline of Maya's final days. Marcus's alibi, once solid in his own mind, began to unravel under the weight of scrutiny. His attempts to cover his tracks were too weak, his lies too transparent. As investigators dug deeper into his actions, an undeniable trail of guilt emerged. The texts exchanged between him and Maya in the hours leading up to her death painted a picture of false reconciliation. Trust betrayed one last time. Surveillance footage revealed Marcus at Maya's apartment, arriving and leaving at times that didn't match his alibi. But perhaps most damning of all were the digital footprints he left behind. Search history that included disturbing inquiries into crime scene investigations, methods of suffocation, and true crime documentaries. It became clear, Marcus had been planning the murder for far longer than anyone had imagined. When detectives finally confronted Marcus, his response was chilling. He didn't resist. There was no shock, no denial, just a cold acceptance of the inevitable. During his interrogation, Marcus's confession came not as an outburst of guilt, but as a calculated recounting of events. He described, in chilling detail, how he had executed his plan. His demeanor remained eerily calm, detached even, as he spoke about the steps he took to win Maya's trust, all while plotting her death. He showed no remorse for the woman he once loved, only an eerie satisfaction that his plan had worked. The trial that followed captivated the community. Maya, a young mother full of potential, had been taken from them by someone who should have protected her, someone who had promised to love her, but instead chose to destroy her. The courtroom was filled with witnesses, with family members who struggled to understand how this could happen, with people who had known Marcus for years, trying to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the monster who had taken Maya's life. As the prosecution presented its case, the evidence was undeniable. The text messages, the surveillance footage, the digital search history, each piece of evidence painted a portrait of a man who had meticulously planned his revenge. The defense tried to argue that Marcus had acted in a moment of madness, a temporary lapse in judgment, but it was clear to everyone in the room that this was no spur-of-the-moment crime. This was the result of a mind twisted by jealousy and revenge, someone who had spent months preparing for this moment. The judge was left with little room for leniency. Marcus's chilling confession, combined with the overwhelming evidence, left no doubt about his intentions. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning with the guilty verdict. When the sentence was handed down, the courtroom fell silent. Marcus would spend the rest of his life behind bars, with no chance of parole. A life for a life, though it could never bring Maya back. This case, now etched into the community's collective memory, stirs more than just shock and grief. It leaves behind a trail of uncomfortable questions, questions that linger long after the trial has ended and the gavel has fallen. Could Maya's tragic death have been prevented? Was there a moment, an opportunity, when someone could have recognized the danger and stopped it before it was too late? Or was Maya, in the end, simply a casualty of a conflict far beyond her control? Two men, each with their own grievances, their own obsessions, tangled in a rivalry that ultimately claimed her life. But what about trust? It's a fragile thing, built over time, then shattered in an instant. Marcus Steele, driven by the corrosive force of jealousy, saw a betrayal where there was none, and in that warped perception he chose revenge. Revenge that ultimately cost him his freedom, and more tragically, cost Maya her life. Was his twisted sense of betrayal enough to justify the lengths he went to destroy her? And at what point did the boundary between love and obsession disappear completely for him? The chilling reality of this case is that it reveals the extreme lengths to which people will go when consumed by hurt, anger, and envy. It forces us to ask ourselves, how well do we really know the people closest to us? How easily can resentment turn into something far more destructive? Marcus, in his mind, was exacting justice for his wounded pride, but the consequences were irreversible. For Maya, what should have been a peaceful life as a mother was replaced by an untimely and violent end, an ending that could have been avoided if only someone had listened, had seen the warning signs, or had intervened. But beyond the details of the case, this story touches on something even more universal: the need for healthy, respectful relationships. How often do we ignore the subtle cues, the ones that warn us that something isn't quite right? Whether it's jealousy creeping into the heart of a relationship, or possessiveness growing in silence, toxic behaviors often hide beneath the surface until they explode. These warning signs are all too easy to overlook. Yet, in some cases, they are impossible to ignore once the damage is done. Maya's family, her friends, they are left to cope with the aftermath. They never got the chance to see her grow, to watch her daughter flourish under her love. The memories of what was stolen from them are all they have left. They are left to wonder, what could we have done differently? Could they have prevented this horrific fate, or were they as blindsided as Maya herself? The tragedy of Maya Roberts' death is more than a cautionary tale about trust and revenge. It's a reminder to recognize the danger of toxic relationships and the subtle ways they can suffocate a person's spirit. It's a call to action for all of us to trust our instincts, to address unhealthy patterns before they become irreversible. It's a message to be vigilant, to protect ourselves, and to protect those we love. The story of Maya Roberts is now a chapter closed, but for those who loved her, the pages are forever marked by loss. A life stolen too soon, a young woman's potential left unfulfilled, a mother's love cut short. The only thing left now is reflection, the hope that something good can come from the horror, that by recognizing the darkness in this world, we can better protect the light in others. And as for Marcus Steele, the cost of his revenge was everything, but the price Maya Roberts paid for their deadly feud was far higher: her life. On the surface, this story may seem like a simple case of betrayal, two men at odds, driven by jealousy, unable to let go of their feelings for a woman who had moved on. But as the layers begin to peel away, it becomes clear that there's much more lurking beneath the surface. It's a story of obsession, of carefully calculated decisions, and a chilling pursuit of revenge. But what really drove Marcus Steele to commit such a horrific act? Was it pure revenge, as it might seem at first glance? Or was there something much more complex, a darker undercurrent that had been building for far longer than anyone realized? As we piece together the puzzle of Marcus's actions, we are forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the people closest to us are capable of the unthinkable. What does this tell us about the limits of trust, about the fragility of the human psyche when pushed to its breaking point? Could Marcus have been driven by something deeper, an unresolved pain, an emotional wound that twisted his sense of reality beyond recognition? It's a question that lingers long after the verdict is handed down. A question that haunts the family and friends left to pick up the pieces of Maya's shattered life. What happens when love turns into something far more dangerous? When jealousy and possessiveness erode a person's sense of empathy and morality? What do you think? Was this a moment of madness, or something more? Something that had been simmering beneath the surface for much longer than anyone realized? The rise of COVID-19 made exercise the norm in the hospital, with more patients realizing their dream of caring for a child through adolescence. and many shared their dream of caring for a loved one. Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts, your theories. What's your take on Marcus Steele's motivations? Did he cross a line that can never be uncrossed? Or was there a point in his life where a different choice could have been made? And if you're intrigued by stories like this, if you find yourself drawn into the depths of human psychology and the darker corners of the mind, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. More chilling stories like this one are coming your way, and you won't want to miss a single episode. Stay safe out there, and remember, trust can sometimes be a double-edged sword. The people you think you know the best may hide the darkest secrets. Be cautious, be aware, and never take relationships for granted.